Today I will recap a horror mystery thriller movie. Spoilers ahead, watch out. This movie starts out with Jamie and Lisa having an intimate scene. Suddenly they receiving an anonymous package in front of their house. They determine that the only way to find out who it is from is to open it up. When they open it, they find a strange ventriloquist doll. They decides to keep the doll. Later on, after Jamie leaves their residence, in the home Lisa hears it get dead silent. Then starts to hear voices coming from the room where they left the doll. She creeps in there slowly, pulls back the sheet that she had used to cover up the doll. And the doll murders Lisa. After Jamie came to home, he saw Lisa was dead. Her face was horrifying and her tongue was cut. Jamie was the prime suspect in his wife's murder, gets interrogated by the police. He returns home to look for clues. He finds some clues in the box that leads him to his hometown, also the hometown of murdered ventriloquist, Mary Shaw. After a brief visit with his rich father, and his father's new young bride.
My son. What a pleasant surprise.
Your father had a stroke 2 months ago.
Jamie finds himself hearing voices in his hotel room.
Jamie!
Meanwhile, at the coroner's office, the coroner, Henry Walker, is getting ready to take a picture of the latest victim while his wife, Marion Walker, is hiding in a dark hiding place mumbling. When he was about to take the picture, he was horrified by seeing victim's face. Then, they cut away to Lisa's funeral where the Marion tries to warn Jamie of the curse of the stare of Mary Shaw. Near the end of the warning, you hear her say that he must bury the doll. Jamie then returns to the hotel, where he finds the name Billy on the back of the doll. He then immediately gets in a car, with the doll, and brings it to the cemetery. After a few minutes of searching, he finds a headstone with Billy on it and starts digging. He pulls at the casket only to find it empty. Throws the doll in, who then looks right at him, and buries the doll. Jamie then gets in his car. When he starts to see shadows of something running and hearing noises, he then sees the doll looking at him through the window and decides to get out and look. But he sees nothing outside. Jamie is back at his hotel washing his face. He is drying his face and has a towel over it. When he removes the towel he finds two surprises. The doll and Officer Jim Lipton are in his hotel room. The officer then begins to use the doll to annoy the prime suspect of Lisa's murder. Jamie begins to tell Lipton about the nursery poem associated with Mary Shaw. They continue to talk about the murder a bit and then Lipton leaves and takes the doll with him. Before leaving, Lipton said to Jamie, "Goodnight, neighbor." Jamie goes out and sees Lipton was living next to him. In the next scene, Lipton is shown shaving and talking to the doll. When Lipton leaves the hotel, Jamie gets the doll back and heads over to the Henry and Marion's house to talk to them. Jamie starts talking to the coroner about Mary Shaw. When Henry says they don't mention the name Mary Shaw, the ventriloquist who lost her voice, they flash back to Mary putting on a show with the same doll. The show was really good and everyone was enjoying it. Mary and the doll, now known as Billy, get into an argument with a child in the audience. Then, back at Henry's house, he tells Jamie that the child in question ended up missing. After Mary died, she asked that she not only be buried with her dolls, but that they make her into a doll. Then they flash back to when Henry was a child, and how he went in to look at Mary's corpse and the table falls, sending him and Mary to the ground of the coroner's office. Then he sees Mary's ghost, but covers his mouth, so as not to scream. Then, back in the present day, Henry shows Jamie pictures of a bunch of townsfolk, all murdered by having their tongues removed. Next, Jamie heads to the old rundown theater while Lipton starts digging up graves at the cemetery. Jamie finds some more clues leading him to believe the haunting is true. Meanwhile, at Henry and Marion's house, Henry walks in on Marion talking to Billy, the doll. Henry was very shocked by seeing this, then takes the doll from his wife and puts it in his office. Then Henry starts to hear things as he grabs a shovel. He thinks it is Marion and he apologizes to her. He then goes to look in Marion's hiding place only to get locked in. After pounding on the door for a bit, he realizes he isn't alone. He sees a hand in the corner and sees Mary's ghost. In horror he screams, and then is murdered in the same way as all the others. Meanwhile, Jamie goes back to question his dad. Jamie finds out that when his uncle, the little boy from the flashback that was arguing with Mary, went missing, the townsfolk thought it was Mary that took him. They went to Mary, made her scream and then cut her tongue out. Jamie realizes that he could also be a victim, since Mary seems to be killing everyone involved with her murder, and their offspring. About this time Lipton shows up and starts questioning Jamie again. Jamie gets a call from the recently deceased Henry telling him to meet him at the theater. Lipton gives chase but is stalled midway in the theater. Jamie keeps hearing Henry's voice guiding him to him. He comes up to a room where he hears the voices come from. Then Lipton walks in with a shotgun and says that Henry couldn't be there due to the lack of a boat for him. Then you hear Henry say that he is in there. They both start following the voices into a room where there are hundreds of dolls in cases with one empty case labeled Billy. They also find a corpse of a boy made to look like a doll. Then it gets very silent, until the dolls in the cases start to move what looks to be all on their own. Jamie says the name Mary Shaw twice. The doll stops moving. Jamie starts talking to this doll who is talking as if it is Mary Shaw herself. Jamie starts asking about specific victims when he finally asks about his late wife Lisa. The doll tells him to come closer so she can whisper it to him. As it starts whispering, "You are the last person." It then sticks out a tongue and the scene shows Mary behind the doll sticking her snake-like tongue through the doll. They were scared to death. Lipton then blows the doll away and starts shooting other dolls once they realize that Mary is living through the dolls. A fire erupts and Jamie and Lipton make a run for it. Then a girder they are running on falls, and Lipton falls and starts to scream. Then he gets saved by the ghost only to have his tongue removed like the others. Then Jamie sees the ghost and covers his mouth, as he falls through the floor into the flooded basement of the theater. He then swims out and ends up on the other side of the lake and turns around as the theater is burning down. Then he gets in his car and remembers the missing doll from the case, Billy, and speeds off. He heads back to Henry's house to look for the last doll Billy. If he can destroy this doll then everything will be over. He hears Marion crying. He finds her holding Henry's corpse. Jamie questions her about the doll. She claims that his father came and took the doll. Jamie rushes off to his father's house to find the doll. He goes in and heads upstairs and it gets dead silent again. Then he hears someone say, "Why did you bury me, Jamie? I am in here." He then walks in and finds the doll in a room of the house. Then the ghost of Mary comes out to try to scare Jamie and he throws the doll Billy into the fireplace. Then Jamie finds his dad who he discovers is nothing more than a life-size doll.
Dad.
He was very shocked by the truth. Then he realizes that his doll father's young bride was controlling the life-size doll and was the ghost of Mary Shaw. He then turns around and sees his stepmom who says, "Now who's the dummy?" Then her face turns evil and ghostly and Jamie screams and suffers the same fate as everyone else. At the end of the film, Jamie's voice is heard saying the poem below as the camera moves over a photo album. With each victim from Lipton to Jamie turned into a puppet with a workable mouth. Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She had no children, only dolls, and if you see her in your dreams, be sure to never ever scream. That's the end of the movie. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and comment below.